Hello, welcome everyone to Across the States, Chalking Against Police Violence and Impunity. This event is a solidarity action across the states within cities and towns. Las Vegas, Olympia, Seattle, Keene, New Hampshire, Poughkeepsie, Fresno, Phoenix, Cincinnati, Nashville. This action was an action call from the Sunset Activist Collective from Las Vegas because police violence is worsening every day. Everywhere in this particular time, in this age, everything is being surveillance and monitored against us and for us. This is everywhere, and this is everywhere. Every day police violence worsens and impunity makes this behavior acceptable, but this is wrong. They even tell us we're in the wrong for filming them, but it's okay for them to film us. This is part of a larger context of historical level of violence and oppression. Oppression doesn't end because people create a country. That's part of the violence. Today we will use chalk to bring more attention to how this aberrant behavior is in law enforcement, and letting this go with impunity rewards the behavior, and it's wrong. We can't rely on one system of justice, but we also need to rely on moral conscience from people outside of society's institutions. Yeah, you may know someone who has been a victim of police brutality. If anybody has, raise your hand. Anybody know some people? Wow, that's a lot of fucking people. There shouldn't be one fucking hand up. Good. Thank you for sharing that. So we're gonna go on. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to everyone for your support. Police violence is wrong and impunity is wrong. All forms of violence is not acceptable. A world of compassion, impunity, empathy are people working inside themselves, internally and externally, to be grounded with all people everywhere and with nature, unreligiously for the betterment of humanity, and say no more to institutionalized violence. This is the words from the activist Sunset Collective from Las Vegas. This is their message about this action. There are some people in Vegas called the Sunset Activist Collective. They do a lot of actions, but some of the successful have been against police brutality using with chalk. Over the last year, with their members have been arrested for chalking and harassed by police, and there have been several suspicious incidents in Vegas where not two, but three members in their group, or at one time or another, have been hit by automobiles. They want everyone to remember that this isn't about them or even free speech so much as it is about the victims of police brutality, which now unfortunately includes some of their members. History of Sunset Activist Collective. This is the words from actually what they wrote. So this is what they said. Rosa Luxemburg stated, "Freedom belongs to dissenters. What form dissent takes should not determined by the state that an oppressed people is upset with. Yet over America, the police attempt determined by the state that an oppressed person is Yet all over America, the police attempt to obstruct people exactly how they will challenge the state. Just carry some signs, they say, or go vote. Isn't it enough that the police investigate themselves when they commit crimes, but now they try to tell us we will expose their brutality, how we expose their brutality?" The Sunset Activist Collective began chalking outside police stations, courthouses, recruiting stations, banks, corporate headquarters, and corporate chains, stores, in an effort to expose the crimes that these institutions commit against people. With the police, we wanted people to understand that it wasn't a right that no police officer in the history of Las Vegas has ever been put on trial for murder. The police can shoot a person in cold blood, unarmed, and expect to go on months and months of paid vacation before being automatically absolved. For about 2 years, we have chalked their sidewalks. Then on June 8, 2013, an officer ticketed 3 of us for graffiti. The charges never made it to court date for July 18, 2013. Upon hearing that the ticket wasn't going anywhere, never made it to court. Said we did what we could, what we wouldn't normally do, and chalked the courthouse sidewalk that same day. For this act, which took place in front of about 40 police Metro gang unit, came after us with full force, and the Clark County district attorney filed charges against 5 people who are my friends. Valentine of the Sunset Activist Collective, Kelly Patterson of Sunset Activist Collective, and also editor of the Nevada Cop Block, JR, an amazing activist, artist, beautiful soul, Haley, Jewel, and Lily. Each of us were charged with graffiti and conspiracy to place graffiti. Graffiti chalk is not graffiti, even under Nevada law. It's water soluble. The district attorneys claimed that the expense of cleaning the sidewalks was $1,500. We know how they do this in Occupy too. They told us we fucked up the fucking parks, and that was a lie. Which he used to charge us all with gross misdemeanors. There was, I'm gonna go on. No conspiracy, just people asking other people if they could come to our event. Haley was given a flyer from the event, at her job, and was driven to the event by Lily. That's hardly a conspiracy. For speaking out against police brutality and effort to crush future dissent in Las Vegas, Metro police began arresting people on August 10th. Kelly Patterson spent 4 days in jail. Valentine spent 3 days before having to be bailed out for medical reasons. They refused to give him medicine that he takes every day. And the next few days, the police drove across town and basically kidnapped Haley Jewel from her home and put her in jail as a minor of 18 years old over this. Neither Valentine or Kelly were properly fed, and it was impossible to sleep in jail. Both of them witnessed horrors going on in the Clark County Detention Center that can only be described as crimes against humanity. The very first thing Valentine did upon his release was dial 911 for another inmate still locked inside, who the police brought in a car accident on a DUI incident. The man was bleeding out of his head for at least a day. The dispatch told Valentine even if the man is in jail, there was nothing to worry about. Valentine still has flashbacks from the time he spent in jail. JR's warrant was eliminated before he could be arrested, and Lily, being a minor at the time, was sent to juvenile hall for a whole day. Police tried to question her about the differences between terrorism and vandalism. Ultimately, the charges were dropped due to intense public outcry, but the damage to the Sunset Activist Collective continues. In addition to chalk protests of 2013, the Sunset Activist Collective has had some continued suspicious activities happening take place among people they know. In 2014, Haley Jewel was stopped by police for following too close, and the officer brought up chalk. Yeah. The next day, a now former member was struck by a car outside of her business. The driver was an ex-cop and current weapons contractor in a rental car. That same week, Kelly Patterson was struck by a car that drove away. His injuries were so extensive. He once rode his bicycle every day, maybe about 60 plus miles, and he's still trying to get back to what it was. At the end of that week, the above-mentioned store was targeted of suspicious police officers who mentioned this is an art supply store. In May, a cameraman who has filmed for us in the past was arrested on a 13-year-old out-of-state traffic warrant and held for 6 days in jail. He was released. His wrist still had marks from the police handcuffs 6 days prior. While being arrested, the police lectured him about the videos he made about police brutality. Yeah, is really, really sad too. On June 28th, Valentine and 2 members of the Sunset Activist Collective participated in the second of 2 actions at the Mexican consulate up the street from their house. Just before unusual formation of police cars appeared, all directing their attention at the consulate. Later, after the action, Valentine and another member were crossing the streets, that same street on their way home, ran a red light and struck Valentine, barely avoiding direct contact, and the other person too. Despite several witnesses stating that Valentine and the other man were in this crosswalk, the police ruled out it was no one's fault. Whether or not the police carried out that incident isn't the point. What is uncertain is that the police report on the last 2 incidents, Kelly and Valentine, the police put the scene of the accident elsewhere from where it actually happened. So it was in 2 different places according to reality and their fucking documents. These are not included in the accident report. A box label statement is marked none. Valentine tried to make a statement at the hospital and the police officer told him he didn't need it. But Valentine told him what happened anyway. That's when the cop told him that he didn't have enough information to make a decision. The accident report in Valentine's case, we've seen the police take photographs of us before. We know from court documents they mentioned our Facebook prior to July 18, 2013. It's not a stretch to assume that they might try to assassinate people by cars. The first person to be hit is no longer with the group, is in part because the police harassment scared him away or her away. The cameraman hasn't spoken to us since about a week after he got out of jail. Sometimes these tactics work for the police. Is that sort of the world we're willing to accept? A world where you... I'm glad to get the other piece of paper. Hold on. Sorry, Valentine. I'm trying my best. A world where you can't tell the state no without even destroying property. We could have smashed windows or used paint, but we used chalk because we knew that the backlash would cause political resentment in Vegas if we did so. There's also something to be said for making an attempt. On June 18, 2013, they cited us for chalk, which was completely peaceful, and we told them that all the people they murdered just makes their job more difficult. 1 year to the day later, 2 cops lay dead in a Vegas pizzeria. We had no connection to the Millers, but we've said stands the police were not willing to listen to the legitimate concerns of the people, and look what happens. There must be room for dissent in a society, or people will find another way to be heard. We have said to carry signs and voting, and we demand that the police hear about the people they have killed, raped, and robbed all of our communities, So if you're interested in contacting the Sunset Activist Collective, I have their information right here. And if you want to just hear it out, it's called sunsetactivistcollective.org. And there's plenty of examples locally where the police have murdered people and with impunity, and they just fucking get away with it. And there's one like, Keaton Otis, Aaron Campbell, James Chasey, James Shahar Perez, Kendra James. These are all sources from the local cop watch, Portland Cop Watch right here. And if you want to know where I got it, that's where I got it. So, and there's like handfuls of this stuff, not even listed. And people just get away with it if they're the fucking cops. So if you guys want to join this action, there's plenty of chalk here. Thank you for listening.
Solidarity with Vegas.
Yeah, thanks to Vegas Sunset Activist Collective.
Good job, brother.